Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Kundali Hari Jaya Radha Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Radhikacharya, also the sees with AC. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Namacharya Das Thakur ki jai. Prem Sagaho, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Radha Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopita Shama Kunda Radha Kota Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadhup Dham ki jai. Gang Jamuna Tulasi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Samavetta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 10, chapter 76, verse 31. Vyakta me kata yasyanti asyanto bratra jamayaha klaibyam katam vira tavanyai katyatam radhe. Certainly may my Katayashanti will speak of Asantya, laughing, Bratra Jamayaha, my brother's wives, Klaibyam, unmanliness, Katam, how, Vira, O hero, Tava, your Anyay, and by your enemies. Katyatam, tell us, Mrde, in battle. Translation, certainly my sisters-in-law will laugh at me and say, "O hero, tell us how in the world your enemies turned you into such a coward in battle." The driver replied, "O long-lived one, I have done this knowing full well my prescribed duty. O my lord, the chariot driver must protect the master of the chariot when he is in danger, and the master must also protect his driver. With this rule in mind, I removed you from the battlefield, since you had been struck unconscious by your enemy's club, and I thought you were seriously injured." Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the 10th Canto, 76th chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Battle Between Salva and the Vrishnis. Sukadeva Goswami said, after refreshing himself with water, putting on his armor, and picking up his bow, Lord Pradumna told his driver, "Take me back to where the hero Juman is standing." Purport: Pradumna was eager to rectify the discrepancy of his having left the battlefield when his chariot driver carried him away unconscious. In Pradumna's absence, Juman had been devastating his army, but now Pradumna counteracted Juman and, smiling, pierced him with 8 Naracha arrows. Purport: Srila Vishnu Chakravarti comments that Pradumna challenged Juman, saying, "Now see if you can strike me." After saying this and allowing Juman to shoot his weapons, Pradumna released his own deadly arrows. With 4 of these arrows, he struck Juman's 4 horses, with 1 arrow his driver, with 2 more arrows his bow and chariot flag, and with the last one, Juman's head. Gada, Satyaki, Samba, and others began killing Salva's army, and thus all the soldiers inside the airship began falling into the ocean, their necks severed. As the Yadus and Salva's followers thus went on attacking one another, the tumultuous, fearsome battle continued for 27 days and nights. Invited by Yudhisthira, the son of Dharma, Lord Krishna had gone to Indraprastha. Now that the Rajasuya sacrifice had been completed and Shishupala killed, the Lord began to see inauspicious omens. So he took leave of the Kuru elders and the great sages, and also of Pritha and her sons, and returned to Dwarka. The Lord said to himself, "Because I have come here with my respected elder brother, kings partial to Shishupal may well be attacking my capital city." Sukadeva Goswami continued, after he arrived at Dwarka and saw how his people were threatened with destruction, and also saw Salva and his Soba airship, Lord Keshava arranged for the city's defense and then addressed Dwarka as follows. Purport: Lord Krishna placed Sri Balaram in a strategic position to guard the city, and he also appointed a special guard for Sri Rukmini and the other queens inside the palaces. According to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti, by a secret route, special soldiers conveyed the queen to safety inside Dwarka. Lord Krishna said, "O driver, quickly take my chariot near Salva. This lord of Soba is a powerful magician. Don't let him bewilder you." Thus ordered, Daruka took command of the Lord's chariot and drove forth. As the chariot entered the battlefield, everyone there, both friend and foe, caught sight of the emblem of Garuda. When Salva, the master of a decimated army, saw Lord Krishna approaching, he hurled a spear at the Lord's chariot. The spear roared frighteningly as it flew across the battlefield. Salva's hurtling spear lit up the whole sky like a mighty meteor. But Lord Sauri tore the great weapon into hundreds of pieces with his arrows. Lord Krishna then pierced Salva with 16 arrows and struck the Soba airship with a deluge of arrows as it darted about the sky. Firing his arrows, the Lord appeared like the sun, flooding the heavens with its rays. Salva then managed to strike Lord Krishna's left arm, which held his bow, Saranga, and amazingly, Saranga fell from his hand. Those who witnessed this cried out in dismay. Then the master of Soba roared loudly and addressed Lord Janardana. Salva said, "You fool,
because of our presence you kidnapped the bride of our friend Sisupala, your cousin, and because you later murdered him in the sacred assembly while he was inattentive, today with my sharp arrows I will send you to the land of no return. Though you think yourself invincible, I will kill you now if you dare stand before me." The Supreme Lord said, "O dullard, you boast in vain, since you fail to see death standing near you. Real heroes do not talk much, but rather show their prowess in action." Having said this, the furious Lord swung his club with frightening power and speed and hit Salva on the collarbone, making him tremble and vomit blood. As soon as Lord Achyuta withdrew his club, Salva disappeared from sight, and a moment later a man approached the Lord. Bowing his head down to him, he announced, "Devaki has sent me," and sobbing spoke the following words. The man said, "O Krishna, Krishna, mighty-armed one, who are so affectionate to your parents, Salva has seized your father and taken him away, as a butcher leads an animal to slaughter." When he heard this disturbing news, Lord Krishna, who was playing the role of a mortal man, showed sorrow and compassion, and out of love for his parents, he spoke the following words like an ordinary conditioned soul. Lord Krishna said, "Balaram is ever vigilant, and no demigod or demon can defeat him. So how could this insignificant Salva defeat him and abduct my father? Indeed, fate is all-powerful." After Govinda spoke these words, the master of Soba again appeared, apparently leading Vasudeva before the Lord. Salva then spoke as follows: "Here is your dear father who begot you and for whose sake you are living in this world. I shall now kill him before your very eyes. Save him if you can, weakling." After he had mocked the Lord in this way, the magician Salva appeared to cut off Vasudeva's head with his sword. Taking the head with him, he entered the Soba vehicle, which was hovering in the sky. By nature, Lord Krishna is full of knowledge, and he possesses unlimited powers of perception. Yet for the moment, out of great affection for his loved ones, he remained absorbed in the mood of an ordinary human being. He soon recalled, however, that this was all a demoniac illusion engineered by Maya Danava and employed by Salva. Now alert to the actual situation, Lord Achyuta saw before him on the battlefield neither the messenger nor his father's body. It was as if he had awakened from a dream. Seeing his enemy flying about him in his Soba plane, the Lord prepared to kill him. Such is the account given by some sages. O wise king, but those who speak in this illogical way are contradicting themselves, having forgotten their own previous statements. Purport. If someone thinks that Lord Krishna was actually bewildered by Salva's magic, and that the Lord was subjected to ordinary mundane lamentation, such an opinion is illogical and contradictory, since it is well known that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, transcendental and absolute. This will be further explained in the following verses. Now, so here we have the incident where Salva seems to put Krishna in illusion by manufacturing a false Vasudeva and cutting off his head and taking him away. And then Krishna seemingly lamenting for this and thinking that his father had died. And then we see here this verse, which is quite famous. It's often quoted by our acharyas to indicate that ordinary people will misinterpret the actions and responses and qualities of the Supreme Lord and think that he is material. In this particular instance, Krishna is fooled by the trick of Salva, and he thinks his father has died and he's been killed, and then he starts lamenting like an ordinary person. So if one thinks that Krishna actually is bewildered and actually is lamenting like and he is an ordinary person, then this is the this is the mistake that people make. So this particular verse is there to correct that impression and say that this is actually all illogical to think like this. And it's contradictory. Why? Because we find so many places in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and particularly the 10th canto, where Krishna is declared to be the Supreme Lord, perfect, with all knowledge, full of bliss, no illusion or ignorance. So if he acts like this and he is in ignorance, it's a contradiction. It's opposite of what should actually take place. Why? Because of the other statements. So if one statement says Krishna is God, another statement says he's not God, that's a contradiction. They're opposites. Krishna is God? No, Krishna is an ordinary human being. This is an illogical statement, or we can say contradictory statements. And therefore we say it's illogical because either one is right or the other is right. And both cannot be right, at least by normal means. Of course, we have a Chincha Beta Bade where Krishna is everything and not everything simultaneously. Then we say it is a Chincha. But in most cases, when we have opposite statements, very difficult to explain them together. Either one is right or the other is right. So it's illogical to have both statements and not explain it. So when there's two contradictory statements, either could be correct. Krishna is God, that may be correct. Or Krishna is a human being, that may be correct. If we go by the Bhagavatam, however, then we have to say that Krishna is Supreme Lord. That is the correct version. Because this is the whole theme of Bhagavatam. Krishna is tu Bhagavan Swayam. He's the highest, not only the Supreme Lord, he's the highest form of the Supreme Lord. So this is repeated over and over. So if there's contradictory statements in the Bhagavatam, then they are secondary statements. We don't take them as absolute. We take the main statements, principal statement, as the absolute statement, and this has to be explained in terms of the other statement. So this is a common principle. We take the stronger statement and then we interpret the other statement in terms of that. We have to explain it. Okay, why is he acting like this, like a human being or whatever? Why is stated like this? And then we give some explanation. This is not uncommon. We see similarly we have in Upanishad statements, everything is illusion, only Brahman is real, only one Brahman exists. And impersonalism. But then there are other statements in the Upanishads that say, no, Vishnu has a form, Vishnu creates the world is real. So we got contrary statements there. So which is correct? So Mayavadis will say, Brahman, that's the main statement, and everything will interpret Krishna, Narayan as Vishnu as a form. That's secondary. We'll have to interpret that in terms of main statement. Everything is Brahman, everything else is illusion. Vaishnavas, on the other hand, will take the opposite statement. Okay, Brahman also that's the secondary statement, and actually, Supreme Lord does have a form. He does activities. He creates the world. World is real. But you can always get caught one way or the other and say, well, why is this stronger? Why is that stronger? And that's why the Vaishnavas and the Mayavadis argue, and they keep arguing on forever and ever according to the strength of their statements. There is a possible resolution to this because Bhagavatam says Supreme Lord is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So he is both, which just seems contrary. He is impersonal and one. He's also many. And he is different from everything. And he has a form, etc. So the Lord is supreme and he creates the material. Plus he's also the one Brahman. So Bhagavatam accepts both, of course. It qualifies this Brahman as not being absolutely everything else as illusion, etc. So in any case, we go by scriptures, and Bhagavatam concludes that the supreme form is Lord with a form, qualities, activities, and Brahman is secondary to that. But Brahman is also Supreme Lord, but secondary. So we have to explain contradictory statements somehow or other. In the Bhagavatam, we'll go by the major theme, the major statements which are repeated many times. And when we find contrary statements, we will have to interpret them as secondary statements somehow. So we'll see in Canto 3, Kapila Dev explains impersonal Brahman in one section. In Canto 11, several chapters Krishna dedicates to impersonal mukti, like that. So the Mayavadis and the impersonalists will take these chapters and glorify these chapters and put them as the main subject of the Bhagavatam. Whereas the Vaishnavas will take them as secondary. Why? Because the main purpose of the Bhagavatam is to propose Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan, and Krishna is not impersonal Brahman. He has a form, qualities, activities, a whole 10th canto dedicated to describing his wonderful activities. So how is it possible that ultimately the form of the Lord is illusory? It cannot be. So therefore, all of these statements about Brahman we find in 3rd and 11th canto and other places as well are secondary statements only. And referring to that Brahman who is an expansion of, or one aspect of, Bhagavan, who is perceived like that by Jnanis or Yogis. So we have to go by the stronger statements. And one way of saying stronger statement is that it's repeated many times. We have so many statements about how Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha, and Brahman is useless and secondary and whatever like that. So many criticisms of Brahman as being a secondary realization. So in this way, by the prominence and prevalence and the repetition of statements, we find which is the stronger one. And therefore, in the context of that, when we find contradictory statements like that, then we have to interpret them. Someone who doesn't want to take this method and simply wants to prove his own point, either materialistic point of view or impersonal point of view or whatever, then he can take the secondary statements and ignore everything else. And then he'll say, this is scripture, I'm going to scripture, and quote these statements. See Krishna here, a human being, because he was crying, because Vasudeva's head got cut off, so he's an ordinary human being. And say like that. So this is, take one incident without seeing the whole of the Bhagavatam. So that's why this verse is here to very clearly state that such persons who do this are actually very foolish. They're speaking illogically if they believe that this is the actual situation. Rather, it has to be explained in terms of the majority of the statements of the Bhagavatam. So this is a good lesson we have to learn, that we cannot simply quote scriptures, but we have to see the context of those statements and see the strength of those statements in relation to other statements in the whole work. Then, of course, we can take not only one work, we can compare this statement or these statements in our explanation with other scriptures and see if there is agreement there. So in this way, we can go to the Vedas and Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras, to the Mahabharata and other Puranas, and then come to the Bhagavatam and see if there's agreement. And if there's agreement, then we say, okay, this is the correct thing, and this other one is foolish. So it may be very difficult for us to do this all the time, since we don't have so much knowledge. So that is why we have our acharyas in our sampradaya, because they go through everything very carefully. They find out what is the prominent statements of the Bhagavatam, what are the main themes, and what are the secondary statements. They go to the other scriptures, and then they'll examine those scriptures and see what is the main theme there also, and come to the conclusion. So that is why we have often quotations. Our acharyas will give quotations from Shruti, from Upanishads usually, or Brahma Sutra to support their point. So they make a point, okay, this is like this because not only it's the Bhagavatam conclusion, but it's also in the Shruti itself. The Svatara Upanishad agrees with this, or Mundaka Upanishad agrees with this also in the quote. So that is why they put those quotations there, to show that this Bhagavatam is not an isolated work with its own unique conclusions, but the same conclusions are there in Upanishads or Shruti itself. So in this way, we have to go through the acharyas, and then we understand, or we get the real meaning of Scripture with no contradictions, and no opposite statements like this. They are all explained very nicely. So for that reason, again, our acharyas, they often quote this particular verse to show that we cannot simply take statements out of context and then quote that to show that Krishna is a human being or whatever like that, simply because he acts like a human being. Therefore, there is good explanation for all of this. So as explained elsewhere, Krishna often acts like a human being. He looks like a human being. He hasn't got a huge giant form in comparison to everybody else. He's just the same size as everybody else. And he acts and has qualities often that resemble those of a human being. This is bewildering for some people, but for others it is very sweet. It is because he acts so human-like, this creates great intimacy in Vrindavan. At the same time, it may create difficulties for some people because they will mistake Krishna for an ordinary human being. He's attached to these people. He's attached to Mother Yasoda. Too much attachment to mother, too much attachment to father, or whatever like this. Too much attachment to gopis. He's a materialist. So similarly here, too much attached to his father Vasudeva. Simply because his father, he's attached to him and worried about him and is crying and disturbed. His mind gets disturbed. So this doesn't look like the appearance of the Supreme Lord in some forms, who is all knowledgeable and knows everything. It looks like he's under illusion. But no, it is natural that the Supreme Lord has affection for his devotees, and therefore he will show his emotions for them in different situations. If the devotee is in danger, then the Lord is very disturbed by that. We see when Prahlad was disturbed by his father, then Nrsimhadev became very angry, and he appeared, and he was so angry nobody could control him. So again, we can attack Nrsimhadev and say, he's too emotional. He's showing anger. But no, these are not material emotions. They are the emotions of the Supreme Lord in relation to his devotee. So of course, we call secondary rasas or vibhachari bhavas that arise in the Lord. They may look negative, but actually they're part of his spiritual emotion in relation to his devotee. Out of love for his devotee, he shows us anger. So, out of affection for his mother and father in Vrindavan, that's Nanda and Yasoda, or in Dwarka, or Devaki and Vasudeva, then he can show emotions, and it is not a problem. He has very great attachment to them. So, the positive emotions are the affection and love he shows for them. And then the negative emotions are in relation to that. When there's disturbance for his devotee, then he'll become, let's say, agitated, confused, angry, bewildered, or whatever. So these are the responses to his attachment to his devotee. He will show these symptoms like this. So therefore we cannot criticize Krishna if he becomes disturbed when Salva puts on this show of magic. So Krishna shows us. Of course, we also know, yes, Krishna Supreme Lord, he knows everything, whatever. But we can give the same argument in Vrindavan also. Krishna knows everything, so why does he have to show all this affection for his devotees and this and whatever, and become disturbed when the cowherd boys are marching into the mouth of Aghasura, and then Krishna becomes very disturbed by that? Why? If he's the Supreme Lord, well, he knows it already, that he should be very peaceful. And when the demon attacks, then he already knows he's going to kill the demon, so why does he have to get excited at all? He should just be very peaceful and annihilate the demon, finish. So there are all of these emotions are there, and there looks like there's an appearance of ignorance on the part of the Lord. And even the Lord is surprised by this somehow. Sometimes he feels, wow, I'm surprised by this also. So it's not the ignorance of the material world. We can say this is the ignorance of the spiritual world, yoga maya potency acting, so that Krishna apparently looks like he's covered up also. And by doing this, it increases certain aspects of rasa for Krishna and for the devotees. So, same case here. We can say it is the Yogamaya influence that he forgets, and that this is only a trick of Salva, and then he laments for his father or whatever out of, or we can say out of great emotion because of attachment to the devotee, he forgets everything else. In any case, it is not a fault in the Supreme Lord, and it does not make him into a material being. He remains the Supreme Lord. Why? Because of the other statements in Bhagavatam and other scriptures, which state that he is Supreme Lord, free from material ignorance, always in bliss, never lamenting like people in the material world. So we have to accept the conclusions of the Bhagavatam and not take these small incidents and start criticizing the Lord for that.
See, Lord has many energies. One of them is called like a Karuna Shakti. He is very merciful. He laments when his devotees suffer. So in the case of here Krishna, that when Krishna saw that black magic that was had scar, can you say that his Karuna Shakti became prevail, and his Karuna Shakti became prevail and for his father, and he started forgetting that he is Supreme Lord because of the energies work here.
Well, yeah, we can say this is Yoga Maya working or whatever, that the affection for his father is so great it overpowers everything else, including his discrimination or whatever like that. Ultimately, at the same time, we can say, no, he's always he's always Supreme Lord, but the play of his spiritual energies are such that it looks like that. So.
All the Bhagavatam is a conclusion for all the scriptures. Still, in the Bhagavatam, we see there is some glorification about Krishna's different form, like you explained here that when many chapters in 11th canto as well as 3rd canto of Bhagavatam explain about this impersonal Brahman. Can we say that it's because when Sukadeva Goswami was explaining Bhagavatam, there are many audience were there, even some Brahmavadi also were there. So to specify that, he was explaining this also.
Yeah, of course. Bhagavata is explaining, yes, other people were there, so through those explanations he attracts them, and once they're attracted, then they can listen to other things also. That's one reason. Another is that the Bhagavatam is like the Supreme Lord, and it has many faces. Supreme Lord has got Madhurya Rasa for the gopis, or the Sakya Rasa for the cowherd boys. He has many appearances for different individuals. So Bhagavatam also is like that. Different people can see different things in Bhagavatam. So the Gyanis can see Jnana there, the Yogis can see Yoga, the Karmis can see Karma Yoga there, and the devotees can see Bhakti. So it is very, we can say, like the Supreme Lord in the sense that everybody can appreciate him in different ways.
Can you say that, because this Paramatma, Brahman and Bhagavan, ultimately there are one form, but Brahman and Paramatma display less qualities. So can you say that only to make sure that Krishna's Supreme Personality Godhead in Srimad Bhagavatam, other like Paramatma and Brahman also explain. There is explanation of this Paramatma and Bhagavan also. Paramatma and Brahman also. To understand the devotees, that Brahman and Paramatma actually devotees are not interested. Because devotees are not interested in the Brahman and Paramatma.
Yeah.
Because it will train less qualities.
Yeah. Well, they're explained because they're in other scriptures. Obviously, we see these descriptions of Brahman and the Upanishads and the creator of the world, Paramatma, is there also. So we find in scriptures, other scriptures like the Upanishads, these statements about Brahman. So therefore, they have to be mentioned. They also have to be explained in the proper context in relation to Bhagavan. And so therefore, they explain it. And Brahman is explained as being like the quality of the Lord almost. It's not the main thing. It's his secondary aspect. And so in this way, there's glorification of the Supreme Lord through this.
When you say that, you are the Lord, that statement is very attractive according to Upanishad. That to clarify this statement, can you say that he also explained here that what is actually really Brahman? What really Brahman is? To clarify the statement, because in the Upanishad, if you take a statement of Upanishad, normal general people will get bewildered by the statement. To clarify that everything in the Bhagavatam, so there is explanation of everything in the Bhagavatam. Because this is like Bhagavatam is like a desert tree. Everything in Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's a clarification of the term Brahman, because Brahman can mean many things, and ultimately it can also mean Bhagavan, as we see from Brahma Sutras. There it means Bhagavan. So that's what the Bhagavatam is, the explanation of the Brahma Sutras. So they're explaining ultimately who is Parabrahman, the highest form of Brahman. That's all.
How one will be able to differentiate between their own understanding and the revelations made by the superiors? Because everything only... How can one differentiate between their own understanding and the revelations made by the superiors in the heart?
Revelations about who in the heart?
The superiors like the acharyas and the spiritual master. So every soul has its own capacity to understand things. But we have to say that the Lord reveals or the spiritual master reveals, the acharyas reveal certain things, the intimate points in the shastras. How do we, because everybody thinks something and think that is the revelation they have got, which may be wrong also.
Well, obviously everybody can make a mistake, but if we become devotees and we follow the method of bhakti according to scripture and the previous acharyas, then we're bound to make less mistakes, particularly if we follow properly through the acharyas. So there's some guarantee that we don't make a mistake. Now, we can't be perfect unless we're on the highest level, but nevertheless, we can say percentage-wise, there's much less possibility of making a mistake. And then if we have individual devotees, gurus, etc., to guide us, then there's less possibility of mistake also. We can't guarantee you're not going to be in Maya and make some misinterpretation of scripture or whatever, but much, much less likely. If you have these safeguards of scripture, acharyas, and devotees, much less.
As a devotee, we should not see we should not take the statement of scriptures according to our own we. I think we should see the scriptures through the eyes of the acharya. Is it true?
Well, that's why we have to accept a parampara system. Basically, parampara means that we accept the commentaries of the previous acharyas. And that's how we get our explanations. So wherever there are unclear points, they explain it in terms of their realization and according to scripture. And then we accept those opinions or those ideas. And then we come to the correct conclusion that way.